UFC 323 is right around the corner, and I think this card is a pretty stacked pay-per-view. I think the card is pretty underrated overall. There's not really that many stars on the card for the casual fans, but if you know what's going on in this sport, if you keep up with the UFC, you should know that this card has a lot of great matchups on it. You have 2 title fights. Like I said, the champions that are on the card, they're not really the stars of the UFC. They have potential to be stars. Merab and Pantoja, they definitely have star potential. Maybe after winning these fights, they could go on to become stars in the UFC. But as of right now, they're not really household names right now. But like I said, I think that makes the card extremely underrated. There are a lot of great matchups on the card, a lot of number 1 contender fights as well. We have Brandon Moreno versus Taira. I think that's a very good matchup. But anyways, in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my predictions for every single fight happening on this card. But before we get into the breakdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get straight into my predictions. And by the way, it's hard to find like the bout order this far out before the card starts. They do change the order of the fights. Sometimes they even change like the bout order like a day before the pay-per-view even happens. That happened when Bo Nickel got moved to the prelims at UFC 322. But a lot of these fights, they're not going to be exactly in order how the fights might happen during fight night. But I'm going to try my best to have like a general outline for the fights occurring on the card. So without further ado, let's get straight into my predictions. First fight on the card, we have Muhammad Naimov versus Myron Santos. And I'm going to be picking Myron Santos by decision. I just think Santos, he's way more controlled and composed over a 3-round bout. He was the Ultimate Fighter winner. I forgot what season, but he won like a recent Ultimate Fighter season, and he's looked pretty good in terms of striking. He did rob Francis Marshall when they fought. That was a bad robbery in my opinion, but he had a good performance against Sadykhov. So I think he's going to kind of do the same thing in this fight. Like I said, he's very technical. He's very composed. He has really good takedown defense as well. So Muhammad Naimov, if he has any plans to try and stifle the striking by attempting a takedown, I think Myron Santos has the proper takedown defense to foil those types of attempts. And I think he's going to win a 29-28 decision. I would say he would win the first and the third round. But moving on to the next fight in the card, in the middleweight division, we have Mansour Abdul-Malik versus Antonio Trócoli, and this is a no-brainer. I'm picking Mansour Abdul-Malik by TKO in the first round. Abdul-Malik, he brings the heavy pressure early, and Antonio Trócoli, he's really struggled with fast-paced starters, and with the power in Mansour Abdul-Malik's hands, he's going to knock him out easy. Antonio Trócoli, when he fought Shower Bullet Magomedov, he looked like a punching bag in that fight, and sometimes he just looks like a deer in headlights when he's in the octagon. And that is not going to be good fighting this type of opponent. Trócoli, he barely has any finishing potential on the feet. Most of his wins are by submission, and this just looks really bad. Like, I just think Antonio Trócoli is going to get knocked out bad and hurt bad in this matchup. I don't know why the UFC made this. This is kind of a very mismatched fight. I think Antonio Trócoli, he should be fighting someone really low down in the rankings. I don't really know the odds for this fight, but I assume that Mansour Abdul-Malik is going to be like a minus like 800 favorite over Antonio Trócoli. So if you're going to be putting money on this fight, I wouldn't bet solely on Abdul-Malik. Maybe you should look at some other props. Maybe like by first round finish, that might get some better odds. But anyways, moving on to the next fight in the light heavyweight division, we have Aslan versus Baraniewski. And I'm going to go with Baraniewski to win by a TKO. I think he's going to have the speed advantage in this fight. It's kind of a risky pick because he's only 6-0. He's undefeated. He's not really proven. But Aslan, at the same time, he just didn't show in his recent fights that he has that finishing potential that he first showed up with against Rafael Caquera. When he debuted in the UFC and he finished Rafael Caquera in the first like 50 seconds of the fight, I thought that he was going to go on and be like a ranked light heavyweight, but he's really looked bad in his last few fights. So I'm banking on the finishing potential of Baraniewski to win this bout. Obviously, Aslan, he does have the UFC experience. He might be able to win by a decision and slow down the pace of the fight, but yeah, I just think that Iwo is going to catch him in the first round. I'm going to trust in that. It's kind of a risky pick. Like I said, he's not that experienced, but I'm going to go with that for my pick. I think that's more likely to happen than Aslan showing up and fighting with any type of IQ. But anyways, moving on to the next matchup in the lightweight division, we have Edson Barboza versus Jalen Turner. He's making his return to the UFC after retiring when he lost against Ignacio Bahamondes. But I'm picking Jalen Turner by TKO. I think this is a really easy matchup. Jalen Turner, he's a glass cannon. He has really high finishing potential. He's just not tough. And he can kind of give up on himself in his fights. In his last fight, he did have a kind of a low IQ moment. I feel like he threw himself into the triangle, and that's how he got submitted. But other than his mistakes in his fights, he's a very competent striker. I think he'll knock Edson Barboza out with either a head kick or that straight left. I believe he knocked out Bobby Green with that straight left, I believe. But I think he's going to knock out Edson Barboza. He's definitely going to have the speed advantage. Edson, he's really old for the lightweight division as well. He's probably creeping up on 40, I think. And Jalen Turner, he's still young. He probably won't go on like a title run like many people thought when he debuted. But Jalen Turner, he's still a very dangerous striker in the lightweight division. And Edson Barboza, he is kind of chinny as well. I can see him being rocked a couple times. If Jalen Turner doesn't get a finish, he's going to get a dominant decision. So I think Jalen Turner is kind of a lock on this card. But anyways, moving on to the next fight, we have Maycee Barber versus Karine Silva. And I'm picking Maycee Barber by decision. I think Maycee Barber is just going to be more physical in this fight. And she's going to just wrestle and clinch her way to a decision. I don't think this is going to be that entertaining. It might be kind of a slower paced fight and more of a fight where they're like grinding on the cage and working in the clinch. But I just think Maycee Barber, she's going to out-physicality Karine Silva. And she's also more durable as well. So she's going to be able to walk forward and take those shots of Karine Silva. And as long as she doesn't get taken down, I don't think Karine Silva will be able to set up any submissions as well. So that's really why I think Maycee Barber should win this fight. It sucks that she didn't get the fight like a couple months ago when she was supposed to fight Erin Blanchfield. I think Erin Blanchfield would have absolutely like whooped her if they fought that day. But against Karine Silva, I think Maycee Barber is more likely to win this type of fight compared to Erin Blanchfield. But moving on to the middleweight division, we have Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira, and this is a very good matchup. I love this matchup, and I'm picking Bruno Ferreira by decision. Bruno Ferreira is explosive. He has a lot of diversity in his striking, and I think it's going to be a tough puzzle to crack for Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori is very one-dimensional. A lot of people say that he only really has that 1-2. He's not really like this high-level striker. He has a really good chin. That's what he's known for. That's why I'm not picking Bruno Ferreira to win by a finish. If Bruno Ferreira does get a finish, it's going to be by submission. Bruno Ferreira, he's very well-rounded. He has the grappling. He has the striking. I think Bruno Ferreira can take him down, and if he does get a TKO, it'll be like ground and pound TKO. He's not knocking out Marvin Vettori. He's not going to like KO him with one shot. Marvin Vettori, his chin is proven to be like the best chin in the UFC right now. So Bruno Ferreira, he's going to outskill him. He's going to be more technical on the feet. He might take him down. He's going to just win a dominant decision. I can see a 30-27 happening. And I think Bruno Ferreira is going to have the speed advantage as well. He's kind of shorter for the weight class, but with that, he's more like compact and he's very fast twitch with his movements. So I can see Bruno Ferreira winning a dominant decision. And let's not forget about the movement. Bruno Ferreira, he has really good movement. Like I said, he's smaller for the weight class. He's lighter on his feet. And I think he can definitely outpoint Marvin Vettori on the feet because he's so fast with his footwork and his movement. So I think Bruno Ferreira, he's definitely has a really good chance to beat Marvin Vettori. I looked at the odds for this fight and it's like pick 'em odds. So if you're thinking about putting Bruno Ferreira on a parlay, I would suggest you like do some research. I'm just really confident in Bruno Ferreira. Marvin Vettori is kind of like on a downward spiral in his career recently. So I think Bruno Ferreira, he has the momentum advantage as well. So I can see Bruno Ferreira winning a dominant decision victory at UFC 323. But moving on to the lightweight division, we have a really good matchup as well between Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. And I'm going to be picking Chris Duncan by TKO. Like I said, I think this is a great matchup. I maybe thought Chris Duncan would be fighting closer to the rankings for his next fight. Terrence McKinney, he's kind of like a mid-level lightweight. He's just kind of getting on a winning streak. I think he should be fighting someone like a Nicholas Moda or a Mason Jones. That would be more of a appropriate matchup and a competitive matchup. But in terms of entertainment value, I think this matchup will definitely deliver. I think this is going to end in a highlight reel knockout. Terrence McKinney, he just doesn't go to decision. All his fights end in the first or second round. Also, Terrence McKinney gets knocked out a lot as well. I'm not going to go as far and say that he's a chinny fighter, but he's one of those fighters where he's either finishing you or you're finishing him. He's a live by the sword, die by the sword type of fighter. And Chris Duncan, he's great at landing clean shots on his opponent. And he's great at recovering when he's rocked as well. Like Chris Duncan, he's kind of scrappy and he's kind of slow. Like Terrence McKinney, he's going to have the speed advantage. But Chris Duncan has that timing in his shots to land that flush shot that I think will knock out Terrence McKinney. I see Chris Duncan knocking him out like out in the open. I don't think he's going to like tee off on him when Terrence McKinney has his back to the cage or anything. I just think Chris Duncan is going to land a nice flush shot on the chin of Terrence McKinney and knock him out. And if you don't believe me about Chris Duncan and his recoverability, watch his Contender Series fight against Charlie Campbell because that comeback was actually insane. And Terrence McKinney, he's one of those fighters where he really rushes in the first round and he makes a lot of defensive mistakes when he kind of rushes for a finish and goes crazy. So I just see Chris Duncan just being the higher level lightweight and finding the right shots to knock out Terrence McKinney. But next fight on the card, we have Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. And this is a great matchup as well. There are a lot of great matchups on this card. The lightweight division hasn't really been having that much activity this year, but in these last like 2 months, lightweight has been moving. And in this fight between Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres, he's finally getting a ranked opponent. He was one of the most dangerous lightweights outside the rankings at one point, so I'm glad that he's getting his shot inside the rankings. But I think a lot of people are going to be picking Grant Dawson because he has the wrestling, he has the grappling, and he definitely has the ability to take down Manuel Torres, lay on him, and submit him in this fight. But I'm going to be going with Manuel Torres because every single time that I think of Grant Dawson, I just can't get that image of him getting knocked out by Bobby Green with that jab. Like, it's so wrong to like base my prediction off that, but Manuel Torres, he cracks, man. And just getting knocked out by a jab by Bobby Green is such a bad loss. And Grant Dawson, he's a good fighter. He's a skilled lightweight. This is a close fight, and I'm not going to be like saying that Manuel Torres, he's definitely going to knock out Grant Dawson. But Grant Dawson, his chin, man, Bobby Green knocking him out with a jab is such a bad look, and I just can't get over it. So I'm picking Manuel Torres by a TKO like in the first round. I think first round is the right call because if Grant Dawson gets the takedown in the first round and starts outworking him on the ground in the grappling, he's definitely going to win that type of fight. Manuel Torres, he's going to win a fight where he finishes him early. But Grant Dawson, if it goes to decision, it's going to go towards Grant Dawson because at that point, he wouldn't neutralize the power and striking of Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres, his striking is unpredictable. He's good at finding great shots in the pocket. He's very good at making it a scrappy fight. So as long as Manuel Torres can defend the takedowns, I think this fight goes his way. So I'm picking Mauro Torres by a TKO. Next fight in the card, we have another great matchup in the lightweight division yet again between Ziam versus Naseem Sadykhov. And this is another pick. I feel like a lot of people will be picking Ziam, but I'm going with Naseem Sadykhov. Because Sadykhov, he's going to be putting that forward pressure and the body work against Ziam, and I think he'll be able to steal rounds. And I'm picking him by decision. I don't think he's going to knock out Ziam. Ziam, he's very tough, but Sadykhov, I think he's even tougher than Ziam, and that toughness is going to let him like exchange in the pocket with Ziam. I don't think it would be wise for him to clinch. The clinch would definitely favor Ziam. If this fight is more of a striking chess match, I'm picking Naseem Sadykhov to land those right shots to win a decision. And hopefully Naseem Sadykhov can mix in the wrestling as well. He's going to have to fight kind of perfect to win this fight. I realize that because Ziam, he is really good. I think Ziam should be fighting inside the rankings. Maybe he should be fighting Grant Dawson instead of Mauro Torres. But this matchup is probably the highest level you can get in the lightweight division between two unranked contenders. So it can go either way. I'm siding with Naseem Sadykhov. I would not think you're crazy if you're picking Ziam. But I don't know who would be a favorite. I think Ziam would probably close as the favorite in this matchup. But I'm going with Naseem Sadykhov to win this fight by decision. Now moving to the main card. In the light heavyweight division, we have Jan Błachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov, and I'm going with Jan Błachowicz to win by decision. Jan, he has some of the best experience in the light heavyweight division. He's been a champ. He's fought some of the most elite light heavyweights, and Bogdan Guskov, he is very good, but he just doesn't have that championship experience like Jan Błachowicz, and he has an amazing chin as well. He's not going to get knocked out in this matchup. He is old. That's like the only thing going against him. He's probably like getting up there like 43. It's kind of crazy that he's still an elite UFC fighter at that age. So age is going to be a big factor in this fight. Guskov, he's going to have the speed advantage, I think. But Jan Błachowicz, he's so good at just being a great counter striker, being a great striker in general. And let's not forget those leg kicks. Those leg kicks, I think, is going to work numbers on Bogdan Guskov. So I just think that Jan Błachowicz is going to win a 29-28 decision. I think this is going to be more of a technical striking battle. I don't think it's going to be like a crazy fight where Bogdan Guskov gets a knockout. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think Jan Błachowicz is going to slow down the fight and really show levels in terms of the technicalities of striking in the light heavyweight division. I still do rate Jan Błachowicz really highly because he went to competitive decisions with Alex Pereira. He arguably beat Alex Pereira. He arguably beat Carlos Oberg. So Jan, he's really been fighting that elite competition, and he is also being more active as well. The gap between him fighting Alex Pereira and Carlos Oberg, he took like 2 years off. So I'm glad to see him hopping back in the cage like a few months later. I think activity would definitely favor Jan Błachowicz in this matchup. So I think he'll win this by decision. Next fight in the card, we have Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbott. And I don't know if this is a crazy pick, but I'm picking Peyton Talbott by decision. Peyton Talbott, first of all, he's a huge bantamweight. He's 5'10", and he's like built. He's strong, and I think that is going to be the biggest advantage in this fight. Because let's be honest, Henry Cejudo, he has the grappling ability. He's a Olympic gold medalist, but he hasn't been able to use the grappling in MMA up to par with his grappling pedigree, if you kind of understand what I'm saying. Because he really wasn't a wrestler for real. He's more of a striker. He's more of a technical striker. He does have the wrestling to lean back on. But if we're going striker versus striker between Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbott, I'm picking Peyton Talbott. He is the better striker. He's younger. He's faster. He has more power. So he has more finishing potential. And he has the range advantage, the frame advantage as well. I think the frame is probably the biggest factor in this fight, like I said, because Henry Cejudo, he won't be able to go to the grappling as well. He won't be as effective since Peyton Talbott is so big. And I think that loss to Ronnie Barcelos really forced Peyton Talbott to work on his grappling defense because that was exposed in that fight. But honestly, I think Ronnie Barcelos should be the one fighting Henry Cejudo, not Peyton Talbott. But I kind of talked about that in one of my previous videos. But Peyton Talbott, he's more of a threat in this matchup. And I don't think he's going to get a finish. But him being more of a threat in certain situations is going to lead to him winning a decision. I think he'll be able to win some rounds. Unless his takedown defense is still abysmal. Actually, I can't say abysmal because Ronnie Barcelos is really good. So if there are still holes in his takedown defense, then Henry Cejudo should win this matchup because he might just control him for most of the fight. But in my opinion, I think Peyton Talbott's takedown defense has improved. He showed that when he fought Felipe Lima. And more importantly, he showed that he's able to get up as well. And I'm picking Peyton Talbott by decision because Henry Cejudo, he is actually very hard to finish. He's very defensively responsible, so I don't see him getting knocked out in this fight. The only person to knock him out, I believe, was Demetrius Johnson. But yeah, Henry Cejudo, he is actually very good at being defensively aware during his fights. So I think Peyton Talbott, he might land some big shots. He might knock him down, but I don't think Peyton Talbott is going to knock him out. I think he's going to win a close decision. I don't think it will be too dominant, but I think he's going to get past Henry Cejudo because the UFC kind of cherry picked the easiest bantamweight with the highest name value to give to Peyton Talbott. Like I said, I think Ronnie Barcelos, he should be the one fighting up the rankings like this. Peyton Talbott, he's good, and I think he'll be able to beat Henry Cejudo. But like I said, this is the easiest stylistic matchup with the most amount of name value in the bantamweight rankings. So I don't know how Peyton Talbott is going to fare against other bantamweights like Corey Sandhagen or even like an Amin Zahabi, someone who's like tough and can stick in there. So yeah, I think Peyton Talbott will win this fight. But once he gets in the rankings, he might not go on like a title run or anything like that. I don't think Peyton Talbott is going to get close to the belt. He'll probably be like a top 10 range type of fighter. But anyways, moving on to the feature fight of the card in the flyweight division, we have Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. And I'm going to be picking Brandon Moreno by decision because of his championship experience and his 5-round cardio as well. Tatsuro Taira, he is really good. He's probably the best grappler in the flyweight division, on par with the champ Pantoja. But I just think Brandon Moreno, he's going to win on the feet. And he has good scrambling to get out of bad situations on the ground as well. He's looked very good in his fights. His fight against Amir Albazi, he looked amazing. In his fight against Steve Erceg, he looked really good as well. And Tatsuro Taira, he didn't really fight a good opponent in Hung Sung Park, I believe his name was. And Brandon Moreno, he's been fighting elite level flyweight competition basically for most of his career. So I think Brandon Moreno is going to win this fight by a close decision. Hopefully this is a 5-rounder because I really don't like when we have a number 1 contenders fight going 3 rounds. Even last week with Bilal Muhammad versus Ian Gary, I feel like that should have been a 5-rounder. I feel like Bilal was just building into the fight, and I think if there were 2 more rounds, that fight would have been way more closer than it looked when it was a 3-rounder. So I think the UFC should definitely schedule all number 1 contender fights 4 or 5 rounds. Hopefully this is a 5-rounder. I'm expecting it to be 3 rounds. I'm not going to lie. But I think a 5-rounder is what you need to see if Tatsuro Taira is ready for championship competition in the flyweight division. But next fight on the card for the flyweight belt, we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van. And I'm picking Alexandre Pantoja by submission. I just think that Pantoja, he really thrives against inexperienced fighters, especially in the grappling. I think that Alexandre Pantoja's grappling compared to Joshua Van is on a completely different level. I think the grappling is going to be the biggest aspect in the fight. And if the fight hits the ground, I just think that Pantoja, his control is going to overwhelm Joshua Van. And I can see a submission happening like in the third round. However, Joshua Van, he's one of those fighters that always rises to the occasion. And it's weird because if Joshua Van wins, I would be very surprised. But at the same time, I would not be surprised because he always rises to the occasion like he did against Brandon Royval. But to me, Joshua Van is lacking the experience to beat someone like Pantoja. He's only been training for 5 years, maybe 6 years. Like, that might be enough time to become an elite striker, but I don't think that's enough time to tighten up all the holes in his grappling, especially when you're fighting someone with the experience of Pantoja. I think Pantoja is going to make Joshua Van look like a rookie on the ground. And another thing is that Pantoja, he's a marauder with a crazy chin. Like, he's going to walk forward, pressure Joshua Van, and take him down in the clinch. I think the biggest factor in this fight is the grappling discrepancy, like I said. But if you think about it, it's really cool to see Joshua Van be the #1 flyweight in the world. But I kind of want to see him fight other fighters like Brandon Moreno, Manel Cap, or Tatsuya Taira. A part of me thinks that a scrappier fighter like Brandon Royval was kind of an easier stylistic matchup since Joshua Van has some of the cleanest boxing in the flyweight division. But anyways, getting back to the matchup, I just see Alessandro Pantoja walking down Joshua Van, getting him to the ground, and taking advantage of the grappling and winning by submission. But now for the main event, we have Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan. And I'm picking Merab by decision. It's kind of the same thing with every Merab fight. He has the relentless pace. He has the constant takedown attempts. And we've already seen this. He's a stylistic nightmare for Petr Yan. Especially when you consider that Petr Yan, he typically starts off slow. Everyone says that he's downloading data. But Merab, he just continues on that relentless pace the whole fight. So I just think that Merab, he's going to be able to bank the earlier rounds. Maybe Petr Yan can win like the 4th or the 3rd, something like that. But I just think Merab, he builds in his fights. His pressure gets more smothering and his pace gets more faster. I just think that Merab, his cardio is going to drown Petr Yan just like he did when he first fought him. A lot of people are saying that they can see a finish by Merab, but I don't see Merab getting a finish. I think Merab is just going to beat him by like a 49-46 decision. I don't think it's going to be a 50-45. I think Petr Yan is going to show some improvements, but Merab, he's been improving so much lately that I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. Maybe Petr Yan might be able to win 1 round. And even when you consider that Merab, he doesn't even get rocked. Like, he has like the best chin at bantamweight. His chin is underrated. Even in his last fight, Corey Sandhagen, he hit him with like this huge flush shot, I believe. I forgot what it was. But anyways, Merab just walked right through it like nothing happened. So I think it's going to take like a brutal finish by Petr Yan to win this fight. He has to win by knockout. Because Merab, he's just going to keep building and building, and he's just going to drown Petr Yan. So Petr Yan, he better be working on getting started earlier in his fights, because that slow start is just going to be the death of him against someone like Merab, who's constantly building. Because if he fights like he usually does, he's going to lose the first 2 rounds. And if you're down 2 rounds to Merab, the fight's essentially over. So Petr Yan, he needs to work on building into the fight faster. But realistically, I just see Merab going out there, imposing his will, implementing that pace, and winning by a dominant decision. So that's going to be it for this video. As usual, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.